To discuss the state of China's tourism industry, Jonathan Cao joins me. He is the Managing Director of BCD Travel, Greater China. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Elaine.
Well, a lot of changes in recent days. How have eased COVID restrictions impacted the travel industry there in China? How are companies, airlines, hotels trying to adapt to these changes? How are they viewing all of this?
Yes, so with the announcement of some of the relaxation of travel restrictions about 10 days ago, we saw an immediate increase in the travel bookings and the demand, because previously even interprovincial or even intercity travel has been pretty restrictive with all the requirements of PCR test and QR codes, and everyone has a slight different version as well. So it's very confusing, and all of a sudden with the relaxation of the restrictions, we saw a huge increase in the demand. So this is very good for the industry and much needed. So I think finally people are now traveling, and we saw the air capacity, for example, in December for domestic travel increased by about 35%. And then also some of the cities, like, for example, from Beijing to Shenzhen, the flights increased by 65% and more, because previously Shenzhen was considered a high-risk area, so there's very limited flights. So I guess the airlines, hotels, and all the tourism attractions are scrambling to get ready for the new business.
Well, Spring Festival coming up, one of the busiest times of the year, if not the busiest time to travel. What are you expecting there? Are people still hesitant maybe to travel for Spring Festival? What is your outlook there? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so I think it is overall the industry is expecting a huge surge in travel because, you know, for the last 3 years, the government has been calling for people to stay where they are for Chinese New Year, and this is the first time that there is no such official message so far. So I know a lot of people are already planning for their trip returning to their hometown, as a lot of people have not been back for a long time. And, you know, with the situation evolving in China, you know, I think people are finally trying to get back to some normalcy and getting back to their old habits and routines, which is to travel and see their relatives and friends during the Chinese New Year. So we're certainly seeing some of that. But on the other hand, of course, there is some smaller minority who is a little bit more hesitant to travel after all the 3 years of prevention of COVID. And I think they're rightly so, especially for the elderlies and also for the people who have longer term diseases. So I think it is prudent probably not to travel during this period of time. I think safety and security, health comes first. But I think overall people are really anxious to travel, and it is shaping up to be a very busy season.
And Jonathan, we're almost out of time, but I'm going to ask you quickly about international travel. What is the outlook for people inside China, maybe perhaps hoping to go outside China for their first trip in a couple of years, and then also for people, foreign travelers wanting to visit China? What are you hearing and seeing there?
Yeah, so it has been reported by some of the local media that January 9th is the date that the quarantine for China will be dropped to 0+3 days, essentially ending the centralized quarantine. So we're seeing the Hong Kong government also reportedly assigning thousands of customs and immigration officers at the borders just to be ready for that. So we're certainly expecting to see the first quarter next year, international flights will rebound sharply.
All right, we'll keep track of it and come back to you again for a check. Jonathan Cao, thank you so much for joining us from Shanghai.
Thank you very much.